What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Spoken Truth podcast. Let's get into some legacy talk. We're going to start with Kyrie. We're going to work our way into Luka. But let's start with Kyrie's return to Boston. Chaz, what are your thoughts, opinions on this return to Boston for Kyrie?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an intriguing factor to watch in this series because we've seen every time Kyrie returns to Boston, obviously
Mhm.
he's met by a pretty harsh reaction from that home crowd. We saw this year when they played just a few months ago in March, he was booed every single time he touched the ball. Obviously Kyrie played there for 2 years, 2018 and 2019. They had aspirations of winning a championship. It didn't work out, and then he leaves on really bad terms with the organization. Even though he's close still to this day with the players on that Celtics team, I don't think Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown or Al Horford or any of those guys that he played with, I don't think they have any hard feelings. But with the Boston home crowd, they're definitely going to give it to him the entire time. And there's been animosity ever since he left. And obviously, the heckling with that Celtics crowd is bad with just about any player. But when you add
Yeah.
in history that they have, it's going to be ratcheted up a few notches as well. We saw Kyrie when he returned to Boston with when he was with Brooklyn a couple of those times. They really got into, he had a couple of incidents with a few fans, so I think it's something we need to watch. I think where Kyrie is at this point in his career, I think he's going to ignore it and just continue to do what he does. I think when he was with Brooklyn and Boston was winning that series and the Nets were kind of struggling, it's a little bit
Mhm.
easier to get knocked off your mental status and you're going to start
Yeah.
talking back with fans. We might see him say a couple of things to a fan here or there, but I think for the most part, he's going to be pretty locked in.
Yeah, I'm just happy for Kyrie, man. I really am. I'm glad that he's here. I'm glad he's getting his opportunity to redeem himself in whatever capacity that people think he needs to redeem himself in.
Well, people acted
Uh,
like his career was over, like he wasn't gonna be
yeah,
like he was never gonna be at this level again, just because for
yeah.
a few years, he kind of not even struggled on an individual level, but the team success wasn't there with Boston or Brooklyn. And then obviously they had, a couple instances in Brooklyn where he was suspended. He also got hurt for a time, so he wasn't seeing the playoff success that we saw prior to that. But I don't think people should have wrote him off like they did, and I think this is finally a chance for him to remind people just how good he is.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in his mouth, obviously, but it was like he also struggled with mental stuff,
Mhm.
as we all do. So, I mean, they're human. In case you guys don't know, these basketball players are human. Like they're just like us. Like they have feelings, emotions. They go through stuff, ups and downs, just like everyone else do. And so, I think for him to be in this situation, I'm just happy for him. I
Mhm.
hope Boston treats him well. I know at the end of the day, it is sports, and Boston is a hectic sports town, and they love their team. And so I'm just happy for Kyrie, and I know that this is going to be a thrill for this Boston team. I expect boos for sure, but at the end of the day, when the series is over, I hope they give him his just due, even if his time there wasn't the best. He wasn't the best leader at that time. And and he knows that, and he said that before. And so you have to go through stuff like that in order to be where you are now. And so he looks comfortable with Dallas Mavericks. A lot of people didn't think it was going to work. I particularly, I gave it a chance. I didn't knock it off right away like some people did. I don't think you did either. And so we thought it could be a chance that it could be special, and we're witnessing it being special.
Yep.
And so Boston, the time there wasn't the best, but everyone goes through that. So I'm happy for them. Boston, they're back in the finals. They're competing, trying to break the record, 18 championship, and Kyrie's trying to stop that. The storylines in this finals is going to be epic.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I just hope that it doesn't cross the line because we have seen
Yeah,
Boston crowds in the past, and I hope it
yeah,
doesn't get to that point. If you want to boo him every time he touches the ball, that's one thing, but there is an obvious line, and
that you
some
don't cross.
fans do cross that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Speaking of Kyrie, let's get into some rankings. Now, Kyrie is already a champion. He hit the biggest shot that heard around the world, one of the biggest shots in NBA history in the finals. Still sad that he hit it on Golden State, but it is what it is. No bias here. I'll be the first to tell you I'm a Golden State Warriors fan, but I'm not biased either. I'm going to tell you the truth. Cleveland deserved to win that championship, and that they did. And so let's
Still
get
hurts
into
still hurts 8 years later?
it still hurts. It really does. It really does. It hurts still. But LeBron submitted his legacy, if it wasn't already submitted, that he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. And so that we are where we are. And so let's get into if he wins another championship, that will make two. Where does he now sit in the all-time ranking of point guards?
Yeah, so when you sent me this topic last night, a few things crossed my mind. First is Kyrie still a point guard?
You can make a list that he isn't. You can make a list he's more of a two guard.
Yeah, I mean, that is a question because Luca obviously is the main ball handler on this team, even though Kyrie does his fair share. But if you're going to make that argument, you could also say the same thing about LeBron when they were playing back in the Cavs.
And Steph.
Yeah, so that's a hard question. If we are gonna say he is a point guard, even though he does have time where he spends at both guard positions, let's say for this conversation that he is a point guard, and I think there's a good chance that he will go down as that when we remember him because that's what he came into the league as. And even though he does play the two at times, he's still, obviously one of the best ball handlers in the league. So if we're talking about the all-time point guard conversation, to me,
Basically what he's listed as, because that's where he's going to go down as.
mm,
So he's listed as point guard. So in the history books, he's going to go down as he was a point guard, essentially.
yeah, so if we're talking all-time point guards, uh, tell me if you disagree, but to me, the top four are pretty locked in any, obviously Magic and Curry are top two in whatever order you want. To me, right after that, I think Isaiah Thomas and Oscar Robertson, in my opinion, should be three and four.
We have the same list. I got Steph one, Magic two, Oscar three, Isaiah four.
Okay, yeah, I think you can mix up that order, but to me, those top four have to be locked in. Beyond
Mhm.
that, it's a little dicey. I'm interested to
Yes.
see who you have as your next few players.
Gotcha. All right. So I don't know. This doesn't come out as a shock to anyone. I think Steph's past Magic when he won his last title in 2022. I believe that submitted Steph as the greatest point guard ever. I don't think we've had that conversation yet. I think we did. I think we had it when it happened. But it happened over 2 years ago. So I do have Steph as number one. I don't think you could go either or. I'm not mad if you say Magic. I'm not being mad if you say Magic's number one, Steph number two. I'm not. And just it's that close. You could go either or. I do have Oscar at three, and then I have Isaiah at four. Now it was dicey because I originally had them flipped. I had Isaiah at three and Oscar at four. That's again, you could go either way. You could put one and two are locked. Three and four, you could switch it. One or two, you could switch it. But
Yeah.
you just can't do Isaiah one, Oscar two, Steph three, and Magic four.
Yep.
Like it's in the order of what it is in their slots, but you could switch Steph Magic, you could switch Oscar Isaiah.
Yep.
And so five, I actually have Stockton. I have
Oh,
Stockton at five. And then my next five is interesting. You can legit put these in any order that you wanted to. But I'm for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to list out. This is not the order I have. I'm just going to list out how I wrote them down. I have Nash, West, Kyrie, Peyton, Parker.
oof. So, okay, I'm not mad at that list. A couple of guys that you didn't mention that I'm surprised were Chris Paul and Jason Kidd.
I think Kyrie is better than Chris Paul
Wow,
all
really?
time.
Okay.
I think Kyrie's better than Chris Paul. Mhm. Jason Kidd is a different story. Jason Kidd, but I'm under the impression I can't have Nash and Kidd next to each other.
Why is that?
Like if I have Nash there, I can't have Kidd there. They're too similar in my opinion.
Hmm.
The dynamics of their playing style was too similar. I think Kyrie brings a different dynamic, and that's why I will have him. I'm not saying I will have him. I think Kyrie is in that group. There's no way I can list out who's the next seven or eight. They're that close. We could, but at that particular time, we would be nitpicking. We would nitpick while we got Nash instead of Kidd. We would nitpick while we choose Kyrie instead of Chris Paul. And so instead, what I just did is list Kyrie in a group, a lump sum of other individuals that I think he belongs in. So Nash, West, Peyton, Parker. We could throw Kid in there. We could throw Chris Paul in there. I think Kyrie is in that category. He's in that room. And I don't know. I don't know. How do you get him higher? Like, I don't know how you put him higher than that. Based on this list, he's top 10.
Does it?
Based on this list, he's top 10. I don't know how you put him higher than that. Higher than, I don't know how you get him higher than that, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you that I have guys like Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, John Stockton, Chris Paul, all in that, 6 to 12 range or right about there. And I think Kyrie is
Give
probably
me your argument for Chris Paul over Kyrie.
well, I think Chris Paul has probably had the better career if you take away that championship. Obviously Chris Paul never had a championship, got close in 2021, but that's pretty much the only thing that's missing from his resume. But he's third
Are we saying with Kyrie if he wins another championship, or are we saying Kyrie as presently right now?
as presently right now. What I
Okay.
was saying is that I have Kyrie just below those guys. I think a second championship vaults him above all of them.
So you think a second title, because this is kind of where the conversation steered. Like the conversation was basically where would Kyrie rank if he wins another championship?
Right.
Like when we do Luca next, where would he rank if Luca wins another championship? So you're saying if Kyrie wins two, he goes ahead of Nash, West, Peyton, Parker, Kidd, and Chris Paul.
I think you got a pretty good argument. Yeah. I mean, he would
So
have
he's
more.
top six.
Yeah. I mean, I would think I would have him there. I mean, he would have more championships than all of those guys.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm not mad at that.
these guys that we're talking about, Jason Kidd and Gary Payton are the only ones that have them, and they both got them at the end of their careers. Obviously
Mhm.
Gary Payton was the best. Gary Payton is the best defender out of all these guys that we've talked about, but he
Yeah.
didn't win that championship in his heyday. He won it with the Heat when he was at the tail end of his career. Guy like Jason Kidd was still very effective on the Mavericks when they won it all in 2011, but he wasn't the player that he was with the New Jersey Nets when he was competing for MVPs. And
Right.
obviously, Steve Nash has 2 MVPs, but no championships. He never even got to the finals. I mean, a guy like
Yeah.
John Stockton got to the finals twice, but never won it. John
Never
Stockton,
won it.
John Stockton is, all-time leader in assists and steals, but he never won a championship, so it's hard to put him on that level. I think Kyrie would have a good chance to jump them all. I think right now, like you said, he's in the mix with them. He's in that same room, but you add a second championship to that, and he continues to do this for the rest of his career as well. Even if he finishes his career with 2 championships, but he continues to play at a high level for several more years, I think he's going to have a good argument to be, in that 5 or 6 range.
I'm not mad at that. There really go so many different ways with this, and essentially what it's going to come down to eventually, we're going to have to nitpick. And so that's just sports. We're going to have to nitpick why this guy over this guy. That's why I asked you why Chris Paul over Kyrie right now. And so it's going to be real interesting where this goes if they win another championship. But right now, with another championship, I think we both have him inside the top 10 and creeping into that top five. Um,
I agree. I
any
mean,
last thoughts on that?
well, to finish that question on why Chris Paul over Kyrie right now, I think he's had the better career. Obviously, he's been around for longer as well, so the longevity does help. But kind of the same thing with Stockton, where Chris Paul is top 3 in assists and steals. Same thing for Stockton. Neither of them have any championships, no MVPs, but they were
Mhm.
the best point guard arguably in the league for like a decade, and their all-time statistics show that. A guy like Steve Nash has the 2 MVPs. Jason Kidd has the 1 ring. I think all those accolades are better than what Kyrie has done to this point, but you give him a second championship, and I think that changes the conversation completely. All of a sudden, I think he has a real argument to jump pretty much every single one of them.
See, I think you would have a stronger argument in case if Kyrie did not perform the way he performed in the finals. If Kyrie was just being LeBron's sidekick, which he was a sidekick to LeBron, but if he wasn't as
And they don't
effective and
win.
efficient,
Yeah, they don't win that
they
championship.
don't win the title without Kyrie.
Yep.
Absolutely not. They don't win that title without Kyrie. And that's what gives him the edge over a Chris Paul. Chris Paul had never been in that type of situation. When he was in that situation, he lost.
Yep.
He's top 3 in assists, but all of a sudden we're looking at the complete game. That's why we got Stockton there because we're giving him the respect when it comes to statistics. But when it comes to overall the career, you can make a legit argument if Kyrie wins another title, he should be ahead of stock. But we're going based off what they're accomplished, statistic, what they've done in their career. So that's why right now I will have to give the edge over Kyrie over Chris Paul right now, even though he has one title. If he adds another one, he jumps him. It's not even close. And so I think what it comes down to is the way that Kyrie performed. Go back to that finals, how he performed. They don't win that finals without Kyrie Irving. And how he's performed this year, and if he wins another title, I don't see how any of these guys you can make a legit argument that any of these guys should be ahead of him. The only person resume wise, if you talk about complete resume, that has a legit argument out of the group I named is probably Tony Parker.
Yeah.
He was part of a dynasty. He won a Finals MVP. He won championships. He's the only one from a resume standpoint. I'm not just talking about statistics. From a resume standpoint, can make a legit argument that he should be ahead of Kyrie.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that take. I think the interesting thing about this conversation is that, like we said, after those top four guys, it's basically wide open. I mean, you got
It's wide
10,
open.
10 to 15 guys that are in that mix that you could pretty much put in any order, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, a guy that we didn't even mention is Walt Frazier, who has
I'll
two
phrase
rings.
it.
Yeah, 2 rings, no MVPs, but was one of the best point guards in the '70s, and obviously the Knicks haven't won a championship since his team did so in the late '70s, and he was one of the best point guards in the league for a long time, multi-time All-NBA first team type of guy. You also have guys like Bob Cousy going way back, and then more modern guys like Damian Lillard and Russell Westbrook, who I don't think are top 10 guys, but they're probably in that next 10. So, I mean, there's a ton of point guards that we've had in this league. And after those top four, it's a pretty wide open room. So I don't think it would be that surprising to see Kyrie climb all the way up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to have more on this conversation. Trust me, we will revisit this conversation if he wins another championship because we can come up with some solidified lists at that point in time. But coming up next, we're going to get into Luca's status. And if he wins his first title, where will he rank all time? Coming up next.